Hello. Hi. I am so excited to be here today, live, running this workshop. We've got so much in store and I just can't wait. Let me know in the chat how you're doing today. How's your Tuesday? And let's dive into this. Now, first and foremost, if we have never met before, if you don't know who I am, my name is Kat Mulvihill. I help people to create more professional, engaging, and seamless virtual presentations. But if I'm being honest, that is not what I set out to do when I started my own training company. I started out wanting to teach personal and professional development. And that's what I did starting in 2019. And when everything moved online, suddenly all of my corporate workshops were transitioned into Zoom meetings. And the very first one, I remember distinctly having this rising panic. It was 3 hours long. And that's when I started researching and I found Ecamm. That is when I found Ecamm and realized what was possible in a Zoom meeting. And I share this because I never intended to teach about virtual presenting and how to use a virtual camera. But every time I ran one of those workshops using Ecamm, using the virtual camera, people would ask more questions about the tech and the software than actually asking about the workshop itself. I hope that is not an indication of how I was teaching, but I think people were so blown away. Now, what I did not expect at all is that years later, in 2024, I would be on a Zoom call, show a graphic, and people would say, what did you just do? What is that? How are you doing that? Literally last week that happened. Someone just interrupted me when I started presenting and said, how are you showing that beside you on the screen? Because the honest truth is the vast majority of people who are in Zoom meetings or Teams or Google Meet, whatever it is, they are not used to seeing graphics on screen. People are used to seeing the screen share. And the screen share sort of tucks you into this tiny little corner at the top while the screens take over. And so today we are going to learn about the virtual camera because I will acknowledge that when you see something that in your eyes kind of looks new and maybe fancy because it's not built in, it takes extra software, that stops a lot of people. They slam on the brakes and they think, yeah, that's going to be too complicated. And so my goal for you is to really break down what it is and why it is not as scary or complicated as you might think. Now, I would love to know, I've got my chat open, that I want to know if you have used it, if you've used a virtual camera in a Zoom meeting or any kind of virtual call. And if you have not, then have you thought about it? Or maybe just haven't and you are actually brand new to this. Also, if you are new to chatting on YouTube, if you are signed in, I want to encourage you to say hello. I'm telling you, we have friendly faces in the chat. I recognize a lot of names. So even if you've never chatted before in YouTube, I want to encourage you to give it a try and see what's up because I want to hear from you. All right, so I have a few different people here who have tried it. So we've got yes, have tried it before. I also see yes, because of that's so nice, Mick. Never have. Well, hopefully we can change that. Have taken the first steps. Okay. I would love to know what that is. Yes, both Zoom and Teams works great. Just finished a session in Zoom. Oh, okay. I can't keep up with the chat. So, all right. It's lovely to see how many people have actually tried it. But for those of you who are on the fence, let's walk through it. Now, what's going to happen over the next few days, because this is a workshop that is spanning a few days. So let's walk through the outline. Today, Tuesday, we are going to go over the essentials, so just really making sure that everyone understands what is a virtual camera, how does it actually work, what are some of the ways you can use it, and I'll just cover some. There are so many things you can do, but we'll focus on introductory concepts so that even someone who's brand new to this can feel comfortable. And then I can't emphasize enough, it really is important for us to go over some considerations because this is software and software is never perfect. So what do you need to know both from your technology and just what are some of the potential hiccups that can happen because we really want to set the stage. Now, tomorrow, Wednesday, we are going to I really want you to start thinking in scenes. So, what am I showing in what order? What will they see and when? And then also just understanding the overlays. What are the essentials? What are the basics? So you can start putting together scenes. And tomorrow we are going to do a demonstration of displaying Zoom comments as overlays. This is new. It is currently part of Ecamm's beta. So I'm going to show you the beta. And for those of you who want to try it, you can also download the beta. You can have two versions running. You can have the official version and the beta version, so you can practice with both. And then Thursday, this is really a session dedicated to the flow, because I'm all about seamless. I want things to just flow without a lot of gaps. You want to maintain people's attention, keep them engaged throughout, and also for you to feel really confident in the presentation you're running. So how do you actually manage your screen real estate? Because we all have different setups. And then how do you actually control the scenes? Like right now, I'm switching between scenes. And then Friday, we are going to practice on a live call together. So instead of coming here to YouTube, we are going to show up to an actual Zoom call, and you can share what you have created this week. You can test it out. We can also get feedback, and we'll get more into resolution later, but we'll be able to test, okay, how is the resolution? How is what I've created coming through? So that is what we are doing this week as part of the workshop. So I hope you're as excited as I am. Now, first and foremost, what is a virtual camera? Because typically when we think of a camera, just choosing which camera will I show in Zoom, we're thinking about something like a built-in camera. But with a virtual camera, you've seen here, we can pull into a Zoom meeting. So I've taken a couple screenshots here where the name introduction that you saw earlier, this is what it looks like in a Zoom meeting. Or if we take a look at the recap that I just went through, this shows up in Zoom. So anything that you saw so far is something that can show up in your Zoom meeting. So how does that actually work? Well, typically when we pick a camera, let's say it's a webcam, our built-in camera, or maybe we have a fancier camera, it shows a picture of us. It's our video. And we join the call and we look like us. It's just showing our camera feed. Now with a virtual camera, we can actually combine our camera plus graphics and overlays, and then we bring that into the meeting. And suddenly everyone else in the meeting is saying, hold on, how are you showing this on your camera? And it's because you are using software. So instead of just choosing your camera directly, you are actually going to choose the software. So when you go into your camera selector, instead of choosing, for example, here you could see FaceTime camera or my CamLink 4K, that's how I connect my camera to my computer. Instead, I would choose Ecamm Live Virtual Cam. So that's how I change the camera. Now I encourage you to also choose the microphone. So the Ecamm Live Virtual Microphone. And this one is something that it can be a little bit confusing, but I actually have a little diagram. So let's take a look at why you want to choose both the virtual camera and the virtual mic. Okay, this is called me writing on screen, which always makes me nervous. But if we bring our camera into Ecamm Live and then Ecamm Live with our video stream into the call, but we choose our microphone in Zoom directly, this microphone is probably going to arrive slightly faster than our video. And this causes a delay between our mouth moving and our audio source. So instead, let's just erase these lines. What we want to do is actually bring both of these sources into Ecamm Live, and then we want both the video and the audio to come into the call so that they essentially are arriving at the same time. So, P.S., that was an example of one of the things you can do by drawing on the screen. All right. That brings us to examples. So hopefully everyone understands the concept of how the virtual camera works. It's a virtual camera. It's not a physical camera that you choose. It's software. And so we're bringing in that camera source with all of the overlays that you've put together. So let's consider what are some of the use cases, some of the ways that you could think about using this in your meetings. And honestly, the first one, I think that's just the most obvious and probably the simplest gateway or entryway into a virtual camera. Just simply adding a logo. So maybe you do something like this, add it in the top, perhaps you put it somewhere in the bottom corner, but even just showing your logo with your camera is something that you can do with the virtual camera. I will admit that there are people who will have their logo as part of a background because they have a virtual background. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about virtual backgrounds in the considerations, but personally, when I'm watching someone with a virtual background, occasionally, depending on their lighting and technology, parts of that person can disappear. This means that you do not have to worry about using a virtual background. You can simply have your background and then you can add the graphic over top while you are talking to someone. So that's one of the easiest, simplest ways to think, okay, let's just add a little something through the virtual camera. Now, another option, showing your name. And this is actually an animated graphic that you get if you registered for this workshop. This came with the workshop. You can customize, obviously switch out your name, and you could pick your colors and your font and export that file, and you can actually have an animated overlay. And I bet if you bring that into your next meeting, people are going to ask, how did you do that? So adding a name is a really simple example. Maybe you want to do something like I did at the start of the call, where you have some sort of outline or a list. This could be an overview of what you're covering in the call. It could be an agenda for the call. Sometimes I also really am a big fan of recapping. So sometimes you might want to recap a few times throughout the call. Maybe you want to summarize at the end. Talk about what's happening next. I think people work really well with a clean, clear list of what to expect. It really helps everyone understand where we are going. Now, we also have the option of drawing. And this is not for the faint of heart. There are some people who are so good at this. I've got my little tablet. So right now I'm just using a green screen background that's an overlay on here. Yes, this is slightly more advanced, but let's say you are someone who has a framework or you want to depict something on screen. Maybe you are drawing some sort of chart and you want to show. I just always find my handwriting so shaky. So I don't do it as often as I should. And I'd love tips for how to make your drawing not so shaky. So let me know in the comments if you have suggestions for that. Another thing you could do is have some interaction with your audience. So maybe you want to kick off the call by asking a question. Maybe you are using an interactive tool like this to review something you just talked about. What are some of the different ways that you can use a virtual camera? Maybe you actually want to assess if people understood a concept, and so it's like a mini quiz. Perhaps you just want something to engage with your audience, and sometimes it's just frankly fun to use questions on screen. So these could either be like I have it right now, where I've got some room at the bottom with overlay. You can also have these shapes on top of your camera. And if there is a correct answer, you can have a scene that just hides the incorrect answers and just shows the correct one. So those are some of the examples that you can use. Now, there's a very good chance that you are thinking to yourself, okay, what about slides? Because I have slides. Is there a way to do both? Yes. We will get into the considerations for slides because resolution matters depending on what is on your slide deck. But let's say you have a slide deck you want to show. You can show it in your virtual camera. For example, let's say I have this keynote presentation and I just want to show the main slide at first while I go through some of the slides. I can actually, this is the same scene, but I'm actually making my way through the slides. But maybe I want to show my face. So I can actually just pop in and show me in the top corner, perhaps, so I can continue to go on with the presentation while I stay in the corner. Or I could do something a little bit more like this, where I'm beside the slides and I can continue to go through my slides and do it like that. Now, with the slides, it really depends on the resolution, but we'll cover that after the use cases because it is something that's really important to note. But you can actually navigate your slides in Ecamm using a virtual camera, and we just have to watch for resolution. Next, I want to share an example of something that I love to do. So if I typically run workshops where there is hands-on work that happens, there are activities, and I'm actually asking people to do very specific things. So what I love to do is to add your instructions on the screen. So while you're explaining, you're still on the screen, you're still visible with your camera, but everyone can read the instructions and you can leave those instructions up. But if I give someone time to do an activity, I don't want to just stare at them while they look at the instructions. So once I've described what to do, I actually hide my camera and I add a timer so they know exactly how much time there is for that activity. This is a really nice way for everyone to be able to glance up really quickly. They can see what the instructions are because all of us forget the instructions as soon as they're told. I can't even count the number of times people forget. What did we just get asked? What are we supposed to do? This way they can just look at the activity and they know exactly how much time they have left. So this is a really great example of what you can do. Now, it's a weird one to end on, but this is something I use all the time. And this is by adding headings, keywords, usually for me at the bottom of the screen. So we call that a lower third. So you've got some sort of material in the lower third of your video window. For me, this is something that I really appreciate because it enables me to stay front and center, meaning I am still the presenter, I am still in the video window, but I'm doing something to give guidance to the people on the call so they know what I am talking about, so that maybe I have a few things that I really want to reinforce and show them. For me, I think that this is a great way to support your audience. We all have been there. Maybe this is you right now. Maybe you have looked away and something else caught your attention. Maybe there's a notification went off. You saw that you got an email. And when your attention returns back to the call, you have no idea what the speaker is discussing. Well, when you have headings like this at the bottom, it does allow everyone to stay on track. And so that to me is a really huge benefit. It's something so simple. And honestly, I don't know about you, but when it comes to slides, I want simplicity of slides. I don't want a huge paragraph. I don't want 100 bullets. I usually like slides that only say 1 or 2 or 3 keywords, just really keep it simple. And so you can usually fit most of those on screen with you. And so that is my preference for how I like to show up. Now you can be really creative with other options, and I'd love to hear other use cases. My main intention today is just to give you a sample of different things that you can do in your Zoom call using a virtual camera. And it can definitely get more complex. For example, you could interview someone. I could have me and someone else side by side in the window. I could even do an entire panel in the call and sort of run that professionally, like running a guest show where I can switch between the guest talking, me talking, the two of us together. There are all kinds of things, but really just start simple. Even if it's just adding your name or a logo, that is a great place to start. Now I'm going to check in and just see if there are any other, first of all, I would also love if anyone else has other examples of ways that they have used a virtual camera or that you've seen other people use that you really liked that I didn't show in my examples, because I know I only showed a few. So let's take a look over here. Oh, I also want to show this. This is from earlier. Live stream and music lessons. Music lessons is a great option. And we've got here, I've used it so much easier now that it integrates with Zoom and Teams well. Okay, let's see. Are there any examples? Okay, yes. And here, we'll be able to do what we're doing right now. I think this is about the Zoom comments. I'm really behind on the comments, clearly. And, oh, I see that there is, yes. I love this. Learning and development, project manager at work. I would love to use Ecamm for our training sessions. I love using Ecamm for training. I mean, that is mainly what I use it for, but it makes such a difference. And also, yeah, we will talk about this. Now, I am not going to throw any shade to someone who chooses to use a virtual background because there are so many reasons why this might be the case. But I really do think when it comes to a virtual background, meaning in Zoom, you say blur my background or you add a photo in the background. Sometimes this is just your situation and it makes the most sense. However, if you are someone who is regularly on calls, you are regularly running the calls, especially if you're teaching, if you're training, you're running workshops or webinars, I encourage you to try to do something with your background so that you're okay with it. And it does not have to be a pro studio. You do not have to spend thousands of dollars. Sometimes even a really simple background, maybe with a pop of light, is all you need. The goal is to not distract your audience with your background. It doesn't have to be fancy, especially when you show up and you are engaging and you're bringing in some of those graphics on the screen. People are not looking at your background. So just consider that. That would be what I would say here. Okay, so let's just see, and we have a Q&A session and I'll collect questions. I just want to see if there's anything else. Thank you, Lou. I'm not alone with that. And I also see for drawing, embrace the shake. Yeah, maybe. Okay, let's see any other example. Okay, and there's a shout out for Video Pencil. So Video Pencil, there are tutorials on how to use it. So that's worth checking out, where with Video Pencil, you can actually bring your Ecamm feed onto your tablet so you can see exactly where you're drawing, because sometimes if it's just green, like what I showed, I just kind of wanted to keep it simple. You're sort of freehanding where it's going to show up in your screen. With Video Pencil, you can actually see your Ecamm screen on the tablet, which is excellent. Okay. Let's get into some of the considerations, because I just really want you to understand that any technology is not without limitations. And we are asking our couple of different softwares to do something that maybe they were not designed to do. So first and foremost, we want to consider our computer's processing power. Now, in case I haven't said it, or in case you're not aware, Ecamm is Mac only. So you do have to use a Mac for using Ecamm. You also, though, should be really looking at how powerful is my current computer. For example, when I first started using Ecamm, I was using a 2017 MacBook Pro, and I had to turn off every other program, every application, and it would still overheat. The fan would kick in really quickly. I had to keep a pretty simple setup. So just some static images and overlays, nothing animated, nothing really fancy. And I couldn't be running a lot of programs at once. And that's just because it was an older device. It did not have a lot of RAM. Now, when I got my next device, which was an iMac, it was more powerful. But even still, because I was asking it to run a Zoom meeting, I was also asking it to run Ecamm, and sometimes I'd be asking it to run Keynote at the same time. This was drawing on the computer. And so I actually doubled my RAM. So if you are someone who does have a desktop and you have the capability in the older iMac, when I say older, not that old, but I was able to buy extra RAM and just add it in the back. It was actually a lot easier than I thought. However, my personal opinion is you should try to aim for an M1. I have the first M1 MacBook Pro. I did try to optimize my RAM, having learned from the past, and I haven't had any issues. I've never heard a fan or anything kick on with the M1 that I have. So your hardware matters, and try to make sure that you can handle what you're asking. And if you have to scale back, maybe that means you have to close things. Maybe you can't have as complicated of a session. And that's just something I really just want to bring home. And if anyone else has other recommendations, then please let me know. Zoom resolution. Oh, Zoom. We love that we can bring this virtual camera into Zoom. However, Zoom's resolution is not always going to play nice. And so many people will say, everything looks so good in Ecamm. Why does it look so blurry when I bring it into the Zoom meeting? There are a few factors. The first is that it depends on the Zoom plan that you have. So if you are on a paid plan, the Pro plan, let's say as an individual, then you can request HD is turned on your account, but the most you're getting is 720, the standard HD. So 720, it's not the top, but I have done a lot of meetings where I am sending out a 720 signal. And if you have large legible words and graphics, people will see them. They're not going to be 100% crisp, but they will be visible. Now, if you're someone who doesn't maybe have a free account, or you do not have Zoom turned on, it's very possible that in your Zoom settings, you are actually only sending out maybe 360, which is really low, and it's quite blurry. And it's really important that you understand that the resolution in Zoom is going to be a limiting factor for what you can do with your virtual camera. If you are on a business or education plan, those are capable of having up to 1080 HD. It does have to be turned on. You usually have to be in full screen, or someone on the call has to be in full screen. So there's a list of little things that you need to know in order to actually be sending out 1080, even if your account has it. And from my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if someone on your call has really low bandwidth, then the entire call's bandwidth is going to be reduced. And so the resolution will be lowered in order to accommodate other people so that they can receive the signal. In other words, plan for some blurriness. And so my recommendation is that you always use large, legible, high contrast writing. For example, right now, I might even go a little bit thicker with the Zoom resolution font, but it's white on a darker background so that it would be easy to read. If you are just getting started, for example, Friday, you can test, we can actually get feedback. How is the resolution? Is your font large enough? Can people see it? But you also want to run a test call with at least 2 other people. Now that can be you signed in through maybe your phone and signed in through your iPad or another computer, or get a couple of people to join on a call, record that call and just see how it turns out. But there are just a few things that you'll want to do when it comes to the Zoom resolution. Remember, we are sort of hacking Zoom by coming in with our fancy production. And so it was not really prepared for that. It's trying to optimize everybody getting the video image. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. It's a little bit frustrating, but it's the honest reality. Okay, you can't use virtual backgrounds with graphics on your screen. And what I mean is that if I were to bring this, let's say this scene right now, if I brought this into Zoom and then I said to Zoom, can you also blur my background? What Zoom is going to do is look for the human and cut out everything else. So it is going to blur anything that's not the person speaking. And that means it's going to hide your graphics. And we don't want that. So you can't use a virtual background with your graphics and overlays with the virtual camera. Now, if you have a green screen, you can actually use a green screen. If you have one behind you, you can change your background in Ecamm. But at the moment, Ecamm does not have sort of an auto blur or a virtual background. And honestly, virtual backgrounds can be really distracting when they cut out a limb or a part of a person's face, hair, etc. They can actually be really finicky and distracting to the viewer. So this is just another issue. And remember what I said, if you are someone who's presenting often, just get your background in a place where it is suitable for your calls and it's not distracting to people. And they'll be so wowed by your energy and your enthusiasm and your graphics that they won't even notice your background. At least that's what I tell myself. All right, camera mirroring. This is a little one, but sometimes people panic because when they see their graphics, everything is turned around and it's backwards. First of all, that's not how people are seeing you. That is a sort of a software preference. I think because people are used to seeing themselves in a mirror, often when you sign into any kind of virtual conferencing, web conferencing software, they often flip your camera by default. So you see what you're used to seeing. And all we have to do with that is just make sure that we turn off mirroring. So when you are in your settings, just make sure that you uncheck mirror my video so that what you see in the meeting is actually facing the right way. It is what everyone else is seeing, but you want to make sure that you can see what it is that you are sending out to everyone. And finally, aspect ratio. So the aspect ratio, this is not an issue for Zoom. So if you're going into Zoom, it's going to be this rectangle and it will stay the rectangle. And you can use something like Spotlight to make sure everyone can see you so you're not in a tiny little gallery with your graphics. So I always recommend spotlighting when you're doing a presentation. But I know that some people, once they start using it, want to jump into Teams. And honestly, Teams and your aspect ratio are not friends because it can automatically resize you. Suddenly you can be a square. So maybe this would be visible if I had aspect ratio in the middle, but if I had a logo or anything on the side, it can actually get cut off. And this I learned in one of my very early trainings when I had to go in a Teams meeting and people said, yeah, I can't see all the things you're showing on your screen. It's not possible. So that's something that you want to take into account as well if you are using Ecamm Live as your virtual camera. All right. That is the end of the lesson portion for day one, trying to keep these in 30 minutes. So what I want to emphasize for next steps, and we're going to go into Q&A, but if you have not yet downloaded Ecamm Live with the pro trial, so you should have access to a 14-day pro trial, which is plenty of time for you to test, especially this week, especially for Friday when we all show up on a call together. And in your email, you would have gotten an orientation demo. So if you are really new to Ecamm, or it has been a while. You can refresh the interface, get that orientation of how does Ecamm work. And there's also a video where I show how do you actually just make graphics in Ecamm. And actually almost everything you've seen today, with some exceptions, were things that I made in Ecamm. And so you can easily start setting up your scenes and sort of practice and maybe follow along with that video. And so that video technically is on YouTube, but I gave you an ad-free version so you could just go and watch the tutorial. And that's today's first lesson. Let's move on to Q&A time. And hopefully we've collected some questions using the Q. And let's move over here and just see what's what. Now, for any moderators, if you want to help me out, if there are any questions you want to bring to my attention. Oh, sorry, that was my test. Let's get rid of that. I did a test comment earlier. Okay, so I do see a Q here. So yeah, if you want to add a Q. So, do you strategically wear black as camo for hiding your mic? Well, it's not about a virtual camera, but yes and no. Yes and no. It is a nice benefit that it hides my mic. However, I actually just stuck with it because for almost all of my overlays and graphics, I knew that I wouldn't clash with them. So that's one thing. But also, I just decided to buy multiple versions of this exact same shirt, and then I never have to make the decision. I think, Steve Jobs made that popular. A few other people around just wear a uniform. So when I'm recording, almost always, I just go with the black. It just works. But it is also camo. It's just not necessarily on purpose. Okay, so Shane is asking the question, I want to use the interview feature with Ecamm, but I struggle in arranging the speaker and guest windows to look sharp. Where can I find some template for arrangement? Okay, so let's actually, tomorrow we're talking about overlays, and I'll do demos. Right now, my resolution on my screen is really small, so it's not ideal for demos. So tomorrow's demo day in Ecamm, where I'll actually show my screen and how to do this. My personal preference is to create the one window, then just hold down Option and drag. You have the exact same shape. You can have them side by side. And now Ecamm has perspective. So you can actually tilt the pictures ever so slightly towards each other. You can make sure that they're identical to each other just by copying the one you already made. And there are lines that help you snap into place, which is also a really nice feature. So I can do a little demo of that tomorrow. I just may need a slight reminder about doing that. And I do want to just +1 to spotlighting. Yes, Spotlight in Zoom is your friend. You can spotlight yourself, but you can also spotlight another person who is speaking. Just remember, if you are then, say, taking questions and you're recording it, remove your spotlight so that it's a little bit more natural. So it's not just people watching your face while you listen to other people ask questions. That's just something I have noticed before. There's no cue, but I see that this is a question. So technically, there's a toggle in your settings in Zoom that say turn on group HD, but from what I have learned, you actually want to put in a ticket. So if you go to Zoom, contact support, and then you can go through, and someone can help me out maybe in the chat if you remember, I've done it a couple of times. You want to submit a ticket just to say, I would like to have HD turned on my account. You can also mention you're using Ecamm Live, and they will turn it on. It's actually pretty quick to do, but you want to send a request. If you are working at an organization, then you may have to contact admin at your organization to ask if HD is turned on, if it's available, because again, that might be organized. The organization level might have some restrictions as to what you can actually do. Okay. Let's see, any other cues? I think I saw a few cues. Any way to make your guest look better when you bring them into Ecamm? So if you are bringing in a guest into Ecamm, you have all the same camera adjustments that you can do on your own camera. So when you open the camera effects panel, there are options like brightness and temperature and saturation. You can also adjust potentially, if there's room to zoom in, you can also adjust where they're positioned on the camera. Something you really want to consider if you are going to show you and a guest on the screen at the same time is to try to make your heads sort of the same level, possibly the same size. It will depend. There might be some limitations depending on where they are showing up. But there are a few things you can do, especially with the camera effects. So that is an option. And let's see, what else? Yeah, you definitely don't want to run Ecamm or Zoom on a 2012 Mac. I think Ecamm has straight up said which models will no longer work, right? Okay, are there any other questions? Let me know maybe in the chat if I'm missing any questions. I also see, thank you, in the chat, there is a link to where you can get some support. There's a support article on getting better resolution in Zoom. We'll also talk about the Zoom integration tomorrow, but that Zoom resolution still holds true. So even if you are using the new Ecamm for Zoom integration in the beta, that it will still be limited by the plan that you are on in Zoom. Okay, and let's... The 2012 Mac is the museum of early technology. Yeah, I think I first heard the term, they say vintage if it's over 5 years, I believe. And then they just kind of stop supporting them at a certain point. Yeah, let's see. Okay, with Zoom, so let's see. Oh, wait. With Zoom and OBS, getting comments on the screen was a project. Is it easier with Ecamm? Can it be done natively within the software? So we are going to see that tomorrow in the beta. Meaning, right now, the beta version does offer this integration. And so in the little comment window, so the way that I'm displaying comments, all the Zoom comments show up as well. So we are going to do a demonstration. So you'll actually see them show up on screen. You'll also see behind the scenes. So I'm going to take you behind the scenes tomorrow and show you how I'm displaying the comments and how that works with the Zoom integration. Now it is a beta, so that's not the official version of Ecamm right now. You can download the beta and have both the official version and the beta. You can choose which one you want to run. And that means that you get to practice a little bit with the beta if you want. You can jump on a call and you can show the comments as overlays. And it is so much easier than using you'd have the Ninja, the Stream Ninja, I think is the software. You have to have it in a browser, all of these different bells and whistles. And it was really complicated. It was still very cool and I still did it, but it was a lot of work and it was not 100% reliable. Sometimes not all the chat comments would come through. So we're going to see tomorrow. And then hopefully, but if it's in beta, it means that it will be in the official version once iron out all the kinks and get people to test it in different situations. All right. I might need some help on this one because I'm not sure I actually have enough tech expertise to answer it, and I could have just not shown the comment, but I'm just going to own it. Maybe someone in the chat can help out with the difference between these. Obviously, one's graphics and one's your central computer, but someone else pop in and help out. I ended up, so for my decision making when I got the M1 was just to get as much as I could afford, as much as it was in my budget. And so I went for, let me just peek at my computer specs about this Mac. I went with the 64 gigabytes of memory, so the RAM, even though they said with the M1 that it's more integrated and that it's not quite the same as what was required on an Intel, but I just wanted to max it out. And I also went with, I think, 1 terabyte of storage. But I am on the M1 Max, and I have been for years, and I have not had any problems with it. Sometimes I look at the fancy new shiny M2, M3, but this is still working, and I haven't had an issue. So maybe if a lot of people are trying to constantly upgrade, so you might be able to get a still really powerful one from someone who keeps upgrading. You can buy a secondhand M1, maybe. And I see here that Rider Coach Corner is saying, I've been using the beta Zoom feature. I love it. Oh, that's so exciting. We're going to show that tomorrow. And yeah, it's just going to make things a lot easier. And let's see what else. I see Neil is sharing, I have a Mac Studio M1 Max 32, no issues with Ecamm video editing. I will admit, when I used to go into any computer store and they would ask you, Are you going to edit video? And they had all these questions. And all I could think was they just want me to spend as much money as possible. And they honestly were trying to avoid people making amateur mistakes and buying a computer and realizing it wasn't powerful enough to do what you want. So I sort of have to apologize to all of the people that I doubted in the stores. I'm sure that happens to some degree, but I could really see now how it really does matter to have a powerful enough computer to run it. The other thing with computer processing is just to say, get in the habit anyway of closing any application you are not using. Close all those tabs, so many tabs. If you are someone who always has all the tabs open, and I know people who have, if they share their screen and I can see all your tabs, I feel anxiety. Did you know that that happens for others like me? Once you start to close the tabs regularly, it just gives you this sense of zen that I just can't even describe. And if I start to have multiple tabs open, now that I'm so used to how calm it is to close my tabs, those pages will be there. So highly, highly recommend closing the tabs. Is 30 tabs too many? 30 tabs is a lot of tabs for me. But no judgment, no judgment. I just encourage you to embrace it. And if you share your screen, please don't show me all your tabs. Just pull that tab out into a new window and show me that one. That is advice for everyone. If I can see your tabs and I can see your extensions and you share your screen in a meeting, you can bet that I'm not looking at your screen. I'm looking at your tabs and your extensions because people are nosy and that is what they do. So if you want to minimize visual distractions for your audience during a screen share, and I still share my screen, by the way, anytime I need to show a high resolution, for example, in the past, I've run a lot of Notion training. I will typically share my screen because I know that the screen share is going to be high enough resolution for everyone to see those details. So if you are ever showing a spreadsheet, if you are showing even a website that has small print, if you are showing a table or a graph, share your screen. You will get the best resolution, and then just use the virtual camera for other aspects of your call. I no longer rely 100% on running an entire meeting just using the virtual camera because I cannot always rely on Zoom's resolution. I know that for most large print, it works great, but anything that is small print where you need that finer resolution, share the screen. But then don't show me all your tabs. I probably sound like I've got some issues. All right, let's see. And then I see Jeremy saying, use Activity Monitor to check individually. The results might surprise you. Yeah, maybe that will help nudge you towards closing them tabs. Okay. Wait, what is this? An M1 iPad Pro 1 terabyte 16 gig will only allow for 499 tabs. What does that even look like? I can't even imagine. Yes. And yeah, you can put this on a shirt. Probably not. No one will wear that shirt. Okay. Let's see what else. I like this advice. Reboot and only open what is needed for the stream/call. I think that is great advice. Just close, close, close. Also, if you have any other automatic syncing, so if you've got Google Drive or OneDrive where they sync in the background, you can pause those as well. So you're just really limiting all the things that are going on so that you can just focus on the things that you need to do and need to do well. All right, did I miss any? I want to make sure I am. Okay, I've got a question here. Is wireless iPhone continuity camera compatible? Yes, it does show up. Right now I can actually see in my camera, I can show you tomorrow. In my camera switcher, it has Catherine's iPhone view. And so if I wanted to right now, I could just flip on the continuity camera and I could switch over to the continuity camera. So you could use that for a webcam, but you can also use it as a secondary camera. Sometimes I'll use my phone to show a view of my desk. Sometimes I'll kind of have it out of the shot and pointing at my desk, and so I can use a continuity camera. Don't have to worry about big cables. Obviously, having a cable is more reliable than relying on wireless for connecting any devices and bringing them into Ecamm, but you can bring in your phone, use your phone's camera, and there are plenty of options that way. All right. Okay, and then I see, So how do you bring Zoom Gallery as part of an overlay? That is a little bit more advanced. I think so we probably won't get into that level of detail, but there are ways of doing that depending on how you're setting up. So if you have the application open, you can share that portion of the screen. You would want to hide your self view so that you don't get the infinite loop. But for most people, that won't be a necessity because we're really talking about running a Zoom call in Zoom. So everyone's already in the gallery, they're in the meeting. It'd be different if you were broadcasting that, but for the purpose of this workshop, we really are trying to focus on how do you run an engaging and professional looking meeting in your Zoom calls using the virtual camera. And you don't need all the bells and whistles and fancy things, even though those are possibilities. But those are things test once you get more comfortable, which obviously there are those of you in the audience who are already quite comfortable with this technology. And I see another one. We'll make this the last question of the day. Does a capture card make a difference or make an important difference to lag? I don't know if I've noticed a huge difference. So right now I've got a capture card connecting my tablet. So I got my little tablet beside. And this right now is actually connected. So I've got the adapter, and this is an HDMI cable, and it's going into a capture card. And that is so that my iPad shows up as a camera source. And then I pulled that camera source as an overlay so that I could draw on top of my screen today. And as far as delay, I don't know, maybe someone else who has more experience with this can answer in the chat. All right, I want to give a huge thank you for spending time with me today. This is day one. We'll be back again tomorrow with around 30 minutes of a lesson. And tomorrow will be exciting because we are going to show the demonstration of the comment overlays. Although before that, we're just going to get into thinking in scenes. What's the anatomy? How do you put together a scene? And then we'll also look at how do you show a Zoom comment as an overlay using the new beta option, which is available for any of you to try. And make sure you have the Pro trial or the Pro plan in order to try the new Zoom integration. So thank you so much. Thanks. You're welcome. This was a lot of fun running it today. It's been a while since I've been live, and I will be here tomorrow, same time, same place. I will see you then. Bye.